Selling starts at no. When the customer says their initial no, they are stating that they are not convinced yet. They need more information because you didn't demonstrate enough value. Selling is an exchange of influence. It's a dialogue that leads to uncovering the challenges that the customers have and their impact on the business. Your customers will have doubts, fears, and insecurities that you need to understand and help them overcome. You cannot push too hard because you will lose their trust, and you cannot trust them to make up their mind on their own. You will need to assist them during the transition, and you do that by asking good questions, filling the gaps that prevent the customer from moving forward and nudging the customer to action when it became necessary. What's particularly fascinating about customer resistance from a psychological perspective is how rarely it represents actual rejection of your solution. Research in decision psychology shows that objections typically fall into 4 categories. Misunderstanding, they don't fully grasp your offering. Skepticism, they don't believe your claims. Indifference, they don't see sufficient value. Or real problems, legitimate barriers to purchase. By recognizing which type of resistance you're facing, you can apply the appropriate response strategy rather than treating all objections as the same. This precision approach explains why top performers often have higher close rates after objections than in situations where no objections are raised. They recognize that objections are actually opportunities to address unspoken concerns that might otherwise prevent the sale. Objections. Not all objections are reflex-driven. Some objections are legitimate and bring up serious issues that need to be resolved. Treat objections with respect, even when they seem trivial. People think different, act different, and behave differently. Try to understand the validity of the complaint and how you can solve it. Objections are concerns and legitimate concerns that need to be addressed. Selling is all about solving problems. Every objection connotes a situation and requires a solution. Your ability to understand the problem, solve it, and draw a lesson from it will serve you well. Once you encounter a new challenging objection, please write it down along with how you solved it, because you will most likely be facing again in the future. You cannot predict what type of objections you may encounter. The more complaints you solve, the more confident you get. You don't want to brush off trivial objections, and you don't want to offend the customer. The best way to answer is, "Glad you brought that topic up. My experience has been the following." Or, "That's an excellent question, Mr. Customer. I will be happy to address that pressing concern." Moreover, great observation, Mr. Customer. Most of our customers at some point believe the same thing. However, regardless of your experience, stay focused, composed, and professional with your customers. Some customers may push hard. Some may appear disconnected, but do not lose control and composure. Keep a good attitude, stick with your agenda. Selling is about serving all types of customers. Some of your toughest customers may become your most profitable business opportunities. I understand that some customers will test your patience and frustration to its limit. Avoid arguing with your customer, stay the course, keep your answers short and on point, and provide compelling evidence that validates and supports your argument. Do not interrupt your customers. Allow them to express themselves freely. Your goal is to gather information and win business, not arguments or fights. Objection related to your first appointment. Customer, we are already in a contract. I understand, Mr. Customer, most businesses are. However, can I ask you a quick question? Customer, we are happy with our current provider, I understand, Mr. Customer, if you don't mind, can I ask a couple of questions before I go? Customer, can you send me some info? I can send you a ton of information. However, our business solutions are uniquely customized for every client. Customer, you have a reputation for being expensive? I understand how you feel, Mr. Customer. However, we pride ourselves on having a business solution that varies in terms of functionality and capability. That is why we offer price ranges that meet all budgets. Turning objections into selling points. This method converts a direct objection into a buying reason, or at least provide the sales rep with more information on the source behind the customer resistance. Customer, you have a great product, but I cannot afford it at this time. You surely cannot afford another day without this business solution that can immediately improve your business operation, save you money, and improve your employee morale. Customer, listen, I'm swamped with customer issues. I cannot discuss your offer today. It's because you are inundated with customers' issues every day that you need to hear how our automated system will free up your time by eliminating 80% of your customer service issues. Customer: business is down. I don't have the fund to invest in your digital promotions. You: it's precisely the time to invest in digital advertising to attract new customers and increase your sales, and here is why. This method uses the customer objection point and turns it into a buying reason. This method requires practice to sound natural. Skilled salespeople use this system, not to counterpunch, but allow the customer to reflect on his perspective. When a customer tells you, "I cannot do this because," the answer should be, "It's because you cannot, that you should, and here is why." Alternatively, you can use the following: "It's precisely because you said that you should consider." Pro tip: create what sales psychologists call an objection-response framework to systematically transform objections into opportunities. First, document every significant objection you encounter and categorize it by type: price concerns, timing issues, competitive comparisons, or implementation worries. For each category, develop a three-part response structure: acknowledgement, validating the concern without reinforcing it; bridge, transitioning from problem to solution; and reframe, repositioning the objection as a reason to move forward. Practice these responses until they flow naturally, focusing particularly on the bridge phrases that smoothly connect acknowledgement to reframing. The most successful salespeople don't improvise objection handling. They systematically prepare for predictable concerns and transform them into opportunities to deepen the customer relationship and advance the sale. Cross-questioning approach. This method is a soft approach that allows the customer to reflect on his statement and share the source foundation on which he based his belief. Customer: your business solution is way too sophisticated for my people. You: what specific features and functionality you find most challenging? Customer: your product is way too expensive. You: expensive in comparison to what, Mr. Customer? Customer: I believe I can find a similar solution for less. You: what makes you believe so, Mr. Customer? Customer: I'd rather work with a smaller company that will value my business. You: why do you believe that a large company cannot match or exceed your expectations? Consider Elena, who sells enterprise software solutions to healthcare organizations. When presenting to a hospital administrator who stated, "Your system seems too complex for our staff to learn quickly," Elena could have immediately defended her product's user-friendly design. Instead, she asked with genuine curiosity, "I appreciate that concern. Which specific workflows seem most challenging for your team?" This question revealed that the administrator wasn't concerned about the entire system, but specifically about how nurses would handle medication reconciliation during shift changes. Elena then focused exclusively on demonstrating that particular workflow, showing how nurses could complete it in 3 simple steps. By isolating the specific concern through questioning rather than defending her product broadly, she addressed the precise objection and won the contract. Cross-questioning isn't about challenging the client, Elena explains. It's about partnering with them to pinpoint exactly what's holding them back. Asking questions using why, what, when, and where will allow you to clarify the situation, find the source of doubt, and weaken the customer argument. Sometimes, asking just a short question and keeping silence will allow you to identify hidden issues that will get you closer to a yes. I don't like the size of your cash register. I understand, but why? I like your value proposition, but I cannot buy it. I see why. I need to consult with my accountant. I understand specifically why. I need to sleep on it. Why do you need to sleep on it? When you ask why, you force your customer to think about their argument, reflect on his approach, share the reason behind their hesitation, identify their challenges, assess their decision-making process, reveal their hidden objection. What's particularly powerful about question-based objection handling is how it leverages fundamental psychological principles about cognitive dissonance. Research in persuasion psychology shows that when people verbalize their own objections and then analyze them out loud, they often recognize inconsistencies in their thinking without the salesperson having to point them out. This self-discovery process is significantly more persuasive than external arguments because it bypasses natural defensiveness. By asking calibrated questions rather than making statements, you activate the prospect's own critical thinking process, essentially allowing them to talk themselves out of their objection. This explains why top-performing salespeople typically speak only 20 to 30% of the time during objection discussions, while average performers tend to dominate these conversations. Paraphrasing method. This approach is simple yet very powerful. The customer may engage in a conversation and ends with several questions that may not be related, or he may ask a question that may not be clear to you. By paraphrasing, you create clarity, order, and limitations to the questioning process. So, you can say something like, "If I understand your question correctly, you want to know if..." Do you mean, are you asking if... I believe your first question was, and your second question was... Take the case of Marcus, who sells complex financial services to business owners. During a crucial presentation to a manufacturing company, the CFO interrupted with a long, rambling set of concerns that touched on implementation timelines, data security, ROI calculations, and team training requirements. Rather than attempting to address each point sequentially, Marcus paused and said, "I want to make sure I'm addressing your most important concerns. If I understand correctly, you have 4 key questions. First, how quickly can we implement without disrupting operations? Second, how we protect your sensitive financial data. Third, how we calculate the actual return on investment. And finally, how we ensure your team can use the system effectively without extensive training." Is that right? This simple paraphrasing accomplished several objectives. It demonstrated attentive listening, organized scattered thoughts into manageable components, prioritized concerns, and gave Marcus control of the conversation's structure. The CFO not only confirmed the summary, but added, "You've actually made my concerns clearer than I did." Let's start with implementation timing. By controlling the conversation through paraphrasing, Marcus was able to address each concern systematically and close the deal. Pro tip: master what negotiation experts call advanced response sequencing for handling complex objections. First, create a framework with 4 distinct response phases. Acknowledge, validate the concern with a neutral statement. Clarify, use cross-questioning to identify the specific issue. Reframe, reposition the objection as an advantage. And confirm, verify the objection has been addressed. For each major objection category you encounter, develop specific transition phrases that smoothly move the conversation from one phase to the next. For example, after clarifying with cross-questioning, you might transition to reframing with, "That's exactly what makes our approach unique." Practice these sequences until they become second nature, focusing particularly on maintaining a conversational tone rather than sounding scripted. The most successful salespeople don't just respond to objections. They systematically transform objections into opportunities to deepen trust and advance the sale. Evade and defer methods. You will encounter objections that may not have any worth or value. The best way is to overlook them by simply nodding your head. Keep your conversation going as if the objection was not raised at all. If the customer objects again, state that you took a mental note and that you will address it at the end of the conversation. Consider James, who sells complex manufacturing equipment. During a critical presentation to a manufacturing plant's executive team, he was midway through explaining key efficiency metrics when the maintenance manager interrupted with a detailed question about a minor component's replacement schedule. Rather than derailing his carefully structured presentation, James smoothly responded, "That's an excellent technical question about maintenance cycles. I've made a note of it, and I'll address it comprehensively when we get to the operational costs section in about 5 minutes, along with some data on how our preventative maintenance program reduces downtime compared to industry standards." By acknowledging the question while deferring its answer to a more appropriate point in his presentation, James maintained control of the conversation flow without dismissing the concern. The executive team appreciated his organized approach, and when he later addressed the question as promised with detailed data, it actually strengthened his position rather than disrupting it. Stick to your agenda. You certainly don't want your customer to be in control, you are. When you hear a valid objection, just state, "Mr. Customer, I'm aware that this is an important question. I wrote it down. That way I can address it along with anything else you may have by the end of my presentation. This system allows you to stay in control and proceed without interruption, overcoming price objection. Most customers will be compliant that your price is too high regardless, whether you are selling $1 million home or a shack, selling a Ferrari or a Kia. There is always a company that will create a product with less functionality or quality for a lesser price. You cannot compete on price because unless you are Walmart, you cannot win by discounting your products perpetually. What's particularly fascinating about the psychology of price perception is how it operates through multiple cognitive biases. Research in behavioral economics reveals that customers rarely evaluate prices in absolute terms. They assess them relative to reference points, perceived value, and the pain of payment. Understanding these psychological mechanisms explains why effective price objection handling isn't about justifying costs, but rather about shifting reference points, enhancing perceived value, and minimizing payment pain. This explains why top salespeople rarely discount, but instead add value components, restructure payment terms, or reframe the purchase decision entirely. By focusing on demonstrating why your product is worth every penny in terms of quality, value, functionality, and longevity, you can influence your customer buying decision process. People want to acquire the best product possible. They are always concerned about quality, performance, durability, and smart options. The key is to find out what key elements the customer value the most and enhance their significance. Take the case of Sarah, who sells premium HVAC systems to commercial buildings at prices 30% higher than most competitors. When a property manager objected to her pricing, saying a competitor offered similar equipment for much less, she responded with a value-based approach rather than a price defense. First, she asked the property manager to identify his 3 biggest HVAC-related costs beyond the equipment itself. He mentioned emergency repairs, energy consumption, and tenant complaints about comfort. Sarah then presented a comprehensive 5-year cost analysis, showing how her system's superior reliability reduced emergency service calls by 82%. Its advanced efficiency features lowered energy costs by 27%, and its precision temperature control virtually eliminated tenant comfort complaints. When we factor in these operational savings, she explained, our system actually costs $143,000 less over 5 years despite the higher initial investment. By shifting the conversation from purchase price to total ownership value, she closed the deal without a single discount. Price objections aren't about the number, Sarah explains. They're about unrecognized value. A customer that is interested in quality needs to understand that your products provide quality beyond what most competitors offer. Explain the quality in terms of endurance, longevity, maintenance, economy, depreciation, efficiency, and brand pride. Customers will spend more when they believe that your product is the best they can afford. Pro tip: develop what pricing strategists call a value-based pricing defense to systematically overcome price objections. For each major product or service you sell, create a comprehensive value map with 4 distinct categories: immediate benefits, what the customer gains upon purchase; long-term advantages, ongoing value over time; avoided costs, expenses prevented by your solution; and reduced risks, potential problems eliminated. When a price objection arises, respond with a 3-step sequence. Acknowledge the concern without defensiveness. Reframe from price to value using language like, "That's why it's important to consider the total value rather than just the initial investment." Then methodically present the specific value components that matter most to this particular customer. Additionally, create a cost of inaction calculator that quantifies what the customer loses by not implementing your solution. The most successful salespeople don't compete on price. They systematically demonstrate why their offering represents superior value despite higher costs.